how to formulate my question, but I mean, it seems like, given the subject of this talk, the question seems almost ridiculous, but it's about practice.
Yeah.
And it's about, you know, I get everything you're saying about, there's like this narrative about the me who's practicing, and everything, but there's still that obviously, I don't know, it's like there's this desire to see my true nature, and there's all these practices that are possible to do, and that I do, but it seems that I'm kind of going back and forth from one to the other, depending on the day, depending on the moment, depending
right.
on, and sometimes I just feel like I don't know what's actually happening, what I'm doing, or what.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, no, I know what you mean, because there's so much information out there now. Like there's so much there's so many things you can possibly do.
Yeah, it just feels there are moments when it's clear what I have to do.
Yeah.
There are moments where it's just like a big confusion. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my advice, and I don't know if it's right, that's just my advice. I mean, in a way, it can't be wrong, because that's the advice that's coming out, and so it's perfect. But I'm just saying that so that you, I think in the psychology of us, it's better that you make the choices, and there's not this dictatorial teacher, but in the end, like, you do things exactly the way you do things, and I do things, and you could also not say that, but it's just trying to work with the psychology of the apparent person. And I know that one thing that's important for the psychology of the person is to feel empowered in their choices, which is kind of crazy because they don't have choices. So that's like, it's a very complicated subject. So there's many layers to it. But my advice would be just pick something and go for it. You know, like pick practices and just stick with those and go with it. Because my experience is it's like, you know, the people that teach on the internet and you read books and stuff, and even in work, this is the same. It's the ones that have stuck to something that have succeeded. And I don't think there's like practices that are better than other practices. There's so many out there that are really beneficial. But I mean, I've got my favorites, but I know that people that have had this realization from completely different practices.
Well, my experience is just that, you know, sometimes a practice will come easily, and I can, like, for example, like for a certain period of time, I'll be able to really focus on inquiry, for example. And then there'll be a period where all of a sudden there's tons of emotions coming up, and inquiry is just it's just impossible to do.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen at all. So then it's like, okay, that kind of thing.
I wasn't clear. Like, so with I just said one practice, but like, if I were to recommend practices, I would recommend like focusing on the I am or consciousness, which you could say is similar to self-inquiry. So that would be that one. But you're right, there does also need to be a practice which is about emotional release. So then, but I just meant so you're right, like I do think that that's true, but I would just stick to, you know, a comfortable emotional release for yourself, and the I am practice, or self-inquiry, and oscillate between the two. So when there's lots of emotions, doing a release. Yeah, so, and also with the emotional release one, there could be like a couple that you go between, but I would really focus on, you know, not going too far out into lots of different ones. And it can be helpful learning different things, because it can, you know, like bring up different things. But yeah, I would not let the attention go into too many things. I would just do a practice and keep on focusing on that practice. And you can keep doing the I am practice also, or the self-inquiry, you know, when there's lots of suffering coming up. It's also super interesting to do it then as well, and really painful.
That for me is something that's been it's like if I do it while I have a lot of emotions coming up, there's almost this sense that I'm somehow pushing the emotion away, or I'm somehow ignoring it or something. It's like bypassing it. Or,
Can be. Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to know, and it's okay if you get it wrong and you bypass sometimes. Like that's like I'm sure I even still bypass sometimes my feelings, because like feelings are quite an interesting phenomena. And you know, you're out in public, or you're with people, or you're like teaching a retreat, and sometimes you're like, yeah, there's this moment in time, this feeling is not appropriate. There's something else that needs to happen. You know, it just happens.
Yeah.
So it's like I wouldn't give yourself too much of a hard time. But if you're practicing also simultaneously an emotional release technique or an embodiment technique, then you know, you can accept that sometimes you're going to bypass. And with the emotional release, like sometimes it might be appropriate to have a couple of techniques under your belt for when sometimes ones don't work, but I would generally stick in the same area. So like sometimes when I work with people, they what's that word called, disassociate a lot. And you know, when they're not disassociating, we can work on the emotion, but when they are, I feel then it's important to work with bodily sensations. So you know, there are these little differences. So this is where it all gets very complicated, but in general I would stick to things. But if you're disassociating, then you might need to not work on emotions and work on just feeling the body, you know. And then there's trauma, so it's not so easy as I make it sound, but generally overall, you know, stick to the same forms of practice. You know, don't keep jumping around, and just keep doing it even through the hell of it and the pain of it. Like keep presenting yourself to it.
That's more or less. I just like, I have two, you know, I've got like, I work on beliefs, I work on emotions and inquiry. But would you mind saying a little more about the I am practice, because that's something that I'm trying to feel into and I'm not really sure I'm getting it.
Yeah, the I am practice is, I mean, some teachers teach the consciousness practice, but it's just never been a thing for me, the consciousness practice. Like keep questioning who you are and that will become clear. So some teachers will teach putting the attention back in the attention, but that to me is like putting it back in the personal awareness. Like you can never really look at consciousness, like consciousness is always looking at you. So listening to these talks and other teachers' talks and self-inquiry, that helps with the consciousness aspect of it. But the I am practice to me is a way of staying present to the bodily sensations and to what's actually happening. So Ramana Maharshi would say that the feeling of I am is in the left side of the heart. And I understand what he means, even though it's not really there, it seems to manifest there. So it's not really in the left side of the heart. That's like when it's beginning to come into form. Like really it's everywhere equally and all things. But I understand that there is a connection to the heart, and then the I am feels like love. And if you go into your heart and you say I am, you might begin to feel this sense of being. I mean, it's a bit of a trick because the sense of being is everywhere, so you can't really feel it, but it's a trick, a bit like the consciousness teachings. But for me, that one worked, whereas the consciousness one, I was always like, okay. So do you know what I mean when I say a sense of being?
I mean, for me, it's that I think that's the it's like part of me thinks yes, but then there's part of me that's like, is that really it?
No, yeah. I would just listen to the part that says, I think I know. And then when you discover that it's deeper than that, then you just discover that it's deeper than that, because you inevitably will. So, because as you have realizations and you go deeper, it becomes like more and more clear and more refined. So I would just listen to the side that feels like, yeah, I know what it is. And then you keep putting your attention in that. And then through doing this practice, it's like becoming really present to the sensations of the body and the sensations of the world, like what's actually happening. Then it will reveal itself to be more clear. Its quality is contentment and love for what is. But it's often covered by lots of emotions and deadness. Like a lot of people feel very numb and very dead and very cut off from the body. But underneath everything, there is this sense of being. And it is connected to the heart. Like Ramana Maharshi, I feel is right, but it's like one of these hacks. It's also not right, but it's. And I find that that's a lot easier to do than the putting it in the empty looking. Although there is beauty in putting it in the empty looking, but it just feels a bit more weird. That one feels a bit more natural or organic.
Okay.
You could also do both simultaneously, like the empty looking and the I am. So it's like, but it's it doesn't really matter.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure, Kate. Thank you. Bye.